Many people believe that Adolf Hitler was the only one who took his own life to avoid capture or defeat after losing the war, but that's far from the truth. It wasn't just Hitler. Fate didn't spare many of his top officials either. They too chose to end their lives rather than face the consequences of their actions. In this video, we'll take you through the chilling stories of these top Nazi officials and the grim fates they met through suicide. We kindly request you to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more gripping historical content like this. So let's dive into the video and uncover the haunting stories of Hitler's inner circle who chose death over surrender. First, Heinrich Himmler. Heinrich Luitpold Himmler, born on 7th October 1900, Munich, Germany, died on 23 May 1945, Lüneburg, Germany at the age 44. He was the Reichsführer, head of the SS, chief of German police, and one of the main architects of the Holocaust. Himmler turned the SS from a small protection unit into a massive, powerful organization that controlled security, intelligence, and racial policies across Nazi Germany. By 1936, Himmler controlled all German police forces, including the Gestapo, secret police, and criminal police, giving him unmatched power over arrests, camps, and executions. Himmler was the main organizer of the genocide of Jews, Roma, and others. He directly oversaw the creation and operation of concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. He authorized the final solution, the mass extermination of Europe's Jews. In the later years of the war, Hitler made Himmler commander of the Reserve Army and later of Army Group Vistula, but he failed badly in combat leadership. As Germany was collapsing, Himmler secretly tried to negotiate peace with the Allies through Count Folke Bernadotte of Sweden. When Hitler found out, he was furious and expelled Himmler from all offices. Himmler tried to hide by shaving off his mustache, putting on a soldier's uniform, and using a fake name, Heinrich Hitzinger. On May 21, 1945, British soldiers stopped his group near Bremervörde, Germany. They noticed he looked suspicious. During interrogation, he finally revealed his identity, Heinrich Himmler. On May 23, 1945, while being searched by British officers in Lüneburg, he bit a hidden cyanide capsule concealed in his mouth. He died within minutes before any doctor could save him. His body was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in northern Germany. The exact location remains unknown to this day. Himmler is remembered as the chief architect of the Holocaust, responsible for the murder of millions, a symbol of the bureaucratic evil of the Nazi system, someone who killed not out of rage but with cold, organized planning. Second, Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels was one of Adolf Hitler's most loyal and fanatical followers, known as the chief architect of Nazi propaganda. Born on October 29, 1897, in Reit, Germany, Goebbels joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, in 1924, shortly after Hitler's release from prison. He quickly became one of Hitler's most devoted supporters, drawn to his charisma and nationalist vision. Recognizing Goebbels' talent for communication, Hitler appointed him as the Minister of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment in 1933, shortly after coming to power. In this role, Goebbels controlled all forms of media, radio, film, press, theater, and literature, and ensured that every message served Nazi ideology. He crafted powerful speeches, emotional rallies, and films that glorified Hitler while spreading hatred against Jews, communists, and other groups labeled as enemies of the state. During World War II, Goebbels used every form of media to maintain morale and justify the war, even as Germany faced defeat. His speeches grew darker and more desperate, urging the German people to fight until the last breath. By 1945, as Allied forces closed in on Berlin, Goebbels remained unwavering in his loyalty to Hitler. When Adolf Hitler decided to stay and die in his bunker in Berlin, Goebbels chose to do the same. On April 30, 1945, Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, committed suicide. The next day, May 1, 1945, Goebbels and his wife, Magda Goebbels, followed their leader into death. Before taking their own lives, they made the horrifying decision to kill their 6 young children, Helga, Hildegard, Helmut, Holdine, Hedwig, and Heidrun. The children were poisoned with cyanide capsules while asleep in the bunker. Shortly after, Joseph and Magda Goebbels left the bunker and went into the garden of the Reich Chancellery. According to witnesses, both took cyanide capsules, and Joseph Goebbels also reportedly shot himself to ensure death. Their bodies were later discovered by Soviet soldiers, partially burned but recognizable. Third, Hermann Göring, the head of the Luftwaffe and Hitler's designated successor. Hermann Göring was one of the most prominent and powerful figures in Nazi Germany. Born on January 12, 1893, in Rosenheim, Bavaria, he came from a well-off family. His father was a former colonial governor, and Göring grew up with a strong sense of pride and authority. Before entering politics, he gained fame as a World War I fighter pilot, earning the title of Ace and receiving the Pour le Mérite, Germany's highest military honor, for his exceptional aerial combat achievements. This wartime hero status later helped him build his image within the Nazi Party. By 1945, as the war turned decisively against Germany, Göring's influence began to decline. When Hitler decided to stay in his Berlin bunker during the final days of the war, Göring, stationed in southern Germany, sent a message asking for permission to assume leadership, believing that Hitler was incapacitated. Hitler interpreted this as an act of betrayal and stripped Göring of all his titles and positions. He was later captured by American forces in May 1945 while trying to surrender to the Allies. Göring was brought to trial at the Nuremberg trials, where he was one of the main defendants accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity. During the trials, he displayed arrogance and tried to justify Nazi policies, showing no real remorse for the atrocities committed. Despite his attempts to defend himself, he was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging in 1946. However, Göring refused to face public execution. On October 15, 1946, just hours before his scheduled hanging, Hermann Göring committed suicide by swallowing a cyanide capsule that he had managed to hide in his prison cell. The exact method by which he obtained the poison remains uncertain, though it is widely believed that it was smuggled in by a sympathetic guard or concealed among his personal belongings. His suicide shocked the prison authorities and denied the Allies the satisfaction of executing one of Nazi Germany's most notorious figures. Göring's death symbolized both the arrogance and the downfall of the Nazi elite. Once admired by Hitler as his most loyal and capable lieutenant, Göring's greed, failures, and eventual betrayal led to his fall from grace. His suicide, like that of many other top Nazi officials, reflected the refusal of Nazi leaders to face accountability for their crimes. Hermann Göring remains remembered as a symbol of power corrupted by ego and excess, a man who rose to great heights in the service of tyranny and chose death over justice. Fourth, Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary in the shadow of the Führer. Martin Bormann was one of the most powerful yet least publicly known figures of the Nazi regime. Born on June 17, 1900, in Wegeleben, Germany, Bormann came from a modest background. His father was a postal employee, and he served briefly in the German army near the end of World War I. After the war, Bormann became involved in right-wing nationalist groups, including the Freikorps, and later joined the Nazi Party, NSDAP, in 1927. Through hard work, loyalty, and political cunning, he steadily rose through the party's ranks, earning the trust of Adolf Hitler himself. Bormann's influence grew rapidly once he became chief of staff to Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, in 1933. When Hess flew to Scotland in 1941 in a failed attempt to negotiate peace with Britain, Bormann seized the opportunity to gain even more power. He took over Hess's responsibilities and became Hitler's private secretary and head of the party chancellery, effectively controlling access to the Führer. In this position, Bormann managed Hitler's schedule, correspondence, and all internal communications, making him the key figure between Hitler and other Nazi officials. His control over the flow of information gave him immense influence, and many referred to him as the shadow of the Führer. Unlike many Nazi leaders, Bormann avoided public attention and preferred to work behind the scenes. He was known for his administrative skills and ruthless efficiency. He used his position to expand his power over the government, the army, and the Nazi Party, often making enemies among other high-ranking officials such as Joseph Goebbels, Heinrich Himmler, and Hermann Göring. Bormann was also deeply involved in the implementation of Nazi racial policies, including the persecution and extermination of Jews under the Holocaust, by coordinating with SS departments and ensuring Hitler's orders were executed without delay. During the final months of the war in 1945, Bormann remained by Hitler's side in the Führer bunker in Berlin as the Allies closed in. After Hitler's suicide on April 30th, 1945, Bormann attempted to escape from the bunker on the night of May 1st to 2nd, 1945, along with other officials. Reports suggest that while trying to flee across the Weidendammer Bridge in Berlin, Bormann and his group came under heavy Soviet fire. Witnesses later claimed that Bormann either bit into a cyanide capsule to avoid capture or was killed by an explosion during the escape attempt. For many years after the war, Bormann's fate remained one of the greatest mysteries of the Third Reich. Some believed he had escaped to South America, as no body was immediately found. However, in 1972, workers in West Berlin discovered human remains near the Lehrter station. Forensic analysis identified them as Bormann's, and in 1998, DNA testing confirmed beyond doubt that the remains belonged to him. This evidence supported the long-held theory that Bormann committed suicide by poison on May 2, 1945, during his failed escape. As Hitler's gatekeeper and closest aide, he controlled nearly every administrative aspect of the Nazi government. Yet, unlike other Nazi leaders who sought fame or glory, Bormann thrived in secrecy and manipulation. His suicide marked the end of one of the most secretive and feared figures of the Nazi hierarchy. Even in death, his legacy remains shrouded in mystery, an invisible hand that helped sustain one of history's most destructive regimes. Fifth, Robert Ley, head of the German Labor Front, in his tragic end. Robert Ley was one of Adolf Hitler's most loyal yet controversial subordinates, known for his leadership of the German Labor Front, Deutsche Arbeitsfront, or DAF. Born on February 15, 1890, in Niederbreidenbach, Germany, he served as an officer during World War I, where he was captured and held as a prisoner of war in France. After returning to Germany, Ley became politically active during the turbulent years of the Weimar Republic, eventually joining the Nazi Party, NSDAP, in 1925. Ley quickly rose within the party ranks, admired by Hitler for his strong nationalist views and unshakable loyalty. In 1933, when the Nazis came to power, Ley was appointed as the head of the German Labor Front, DAF, an organization that replaced all independent trade unions in Germany. Under his command, the DAF became one of the largest organizations in the Nazi state, boasting over 25 million members. Its purpose was to control and organize German workers, ensuring they supported Nazi goals and ideology. Ley's task was to eliminate worker resistance and promote the Nazi idea that employers and employees should work together for the good of the nation rather than for individual or class interests. One of Ley's major propaganda achievements was the Strength Through Joy, Kraft durch Freude, program, which aimed to win workers' support by offering leisure activities, vacations, and cultural events. It even planned to provide affordable cars for Germans through the Volkswagen Project. However, despite these social campaigns, the DAF was built on exploitation. Real workers' rights were destroyed, strikes were banned, and wages were strictly controlled. Ley's organization played a crucial role in mobilizing the German labor force for the war effort, especially in armament and construction projects that relied heavily on forced labor from occupied territories. Ley was known for his lack of discipline, arrogance, and heavy drinking. His behavior and corruption became notorious within the Nazi hierarchy, and even Hitler grew frustrated with his incompetence at times. Still, he remained loyal and useful to the regime, often speaking at Nazi rallies and promoting Hitler's vision of a unified and obedient workforce. As the war progressed and Germany began to lose, Ley's influence weakened, but his loyalty to Hitler never faded. After the fall of Nazi Germany in 1945, Robert Ley was captured by Allied forces. He was soon indicted at the Nuremberg trials, accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity, particularly for his role in exploiting millions of forced laborers under brutal conditions. While awaiting trial in his cell, Ley became increasingly unstable, both mentally and emotionally. On October 25, 1945, Before his trial could begin, he committed suicide by hanging himself with a towel tied to a toilet pipe in his Nuremberg prison cell. He left behind a brief written statement expressing loyalty to Hitler and claiming that he was being unjustly accused.